Hello, my name is Turper Rafaeluna Aralsson, and in this video I will present the results from the project BREC, bridging the gap between research and education in the circular bioeconomy. This project has been co-founded by the European Union through interreg-baltic.eu region. Here is the biorefinery plant that we have come up with. It includes a protein extraction plant, pretreatment, a biogas plant, nitrogen fixation plant, and biogas upgrading with CO2 liquefaction. This plant is dimensioned based on input from a relatively small farm at an agricultural school in Norway and would not be commercially sustainable today. However, on a larger scale and with further development of each technology, we believe that this type of biorefineries might become more prevalent in the future, even as add-ons on existing biogas plants. In this video, I will give an introduction to each technology and explain the benefits of putting it all together in one plant. I will then give some honorable mentions to technologies that we have looked into but not included in our concept, including dewatering technologies, phosphorus extraction, pyrolysis, biochar, and gasification. In the end of the video, I point out to some information material that we have produced and that you might be interested in. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to click on the timestamps below to go directly to the topic that interests you. First, let's talk about biogas. Do you know what happens to your food waste when you recycle, or to your own waste after you flush it down the toilet? Depending on where you live, there's a good chance it's being treated in a biogas plant. The process is very simple. You just insert organic material into a gas-tight container that can keep both sunshine and air out. Microorganisms inside the container will start to eat the organic material and produce biogas, mostly methane and carbon dioxide. This process mimics what happens inside the digestive system of a cow, and if you want to run your biogas digester smoothly, you can just think about how you would treat a cow. You want to feed it regularly, and it needs to go to the bathroom, which means that some of its content needs to be removed regularly as well. This is managed very easily in a biogas plant, as material from the end of the plant will be pushed out as you feed the plant more organic material. You get more gas if you are able to keep it at a relatively stable, comfortable temperature, and don't change its diet too fast and too often, as this can lead to some digestive issues. You don't need to worry too much about your biogas plant's happiness, but you might have to replace some parts now and then. While the plant gets its name from the biogas that is being produced, it also has another very important product called digestate. As the name implies, digestate is the residual organic material that has not been converted into gas. Digestate contains all the nutrients that were in the original material, but it has now been broken down, making the nutrients more plant available in addition to being more homogeneous and have less smell. What's more, the digestate contains a large amount of stable carbon, which did not break down and convert to gas through the biogas process. Even though biogas is amazing, it's not always the preferred product. This is because most materials that you could put into the biogas plant would be utilized better somewhere else. This, of course, includes any product meant for consumption, but also residues that can be used for purposes of a higher value than energy, such as waste from fisheries that can be used to produce bone meal and oils. Another such example is grass. Now, using grass as a feedstock for animals is very convenient because it grows virtually anywhere, even in areas where other crops won't grow. This is what makes ruminants so special. They allow us to convert food that we can't digest into valuable protein-rich meat. However, many animals can't make use of grass protein directly, for example pigs, poultry, and fish. And the food production for these animals in the form of wheat, corn, or soya may compete with producing food for humans. Another reason for why this technology is interesting is that the concentrated grass protein is much easier to store and transport than raw grass, which is voluminous and has a low nutrient and energy density. So how does it work? Fairly simple. You just run the grass through a screw press, which produces two fractions: a dry fraction, fiber pulp, and a liquid fraction, green juice. From the green juice, the protein can be separated by heating and centrifuging. The protein then becomes a powder with a protein content of about 50%, depending on the type of gras used. What remains after the protein has been removed is a liquid called brown juice. The dry fraction, the fiber pulp, can be used as feed for ruminants or as a substrate for biogas production. The brown liquor can be used as feed for pigs or as a substrate for biogas production. If you're interested in this technology, I recommend that you check out the Green Valleys project, which is also funded by the EU and has set up 2 pilot plants for protein extraction from gras. Usually, biogas plants will mostly treat soft organic materials such as food waste, wastewater, manure, or residues from industrial processes such as food processing. The biogas plants may also want to avoid hard organic materials such as garden waste or straw. The reason for this is that these materials have cellular structures built from cellulose that are very difficult for the microorganisms inside a biogas plant to break down, meaning that they don't really produce a whole lot of biogas. Another reason is that most biogas plants run on organic material that can be mixed with water and pumped, but hard organic materials don't mix well and can cause problems. They can create an unwanted layer on top that blocks the biogas from escaping, or they can cause more straining on the pumps. There are, however, pre-treatment methods that can mitigate some of these issues. For example, you can mechanically pre-treat the straw by cutting and grinding it into powder before adding it to the biogas plants. You can chemically or biologically pre-treat it by adding acids, bacteria, or fungi. Or you can use thermal processes such as steam explosion to destroy the lignocellulose-rich cells. These processes are quite expensive and usually require large biogas plants to be worth investments. For smaller plants, you probably want other industries to do the pre-treatment for you. For example, by treating the residues from mills that have already broken down cells in the wheat. Or you want straw that has already been grinded and heated by turning it into pellets and already used as bedding for cows, pigs, or other animals. Alright, so let's say you have now made your biogas, either from manure or even with the fiber pulp from protein extraction from gras. Raw biogas can be used directly in standard gas burners and gas engines with minor modifications. However, it is a very corrosive gas, and if you don't want to change your engine every 2 years, it might be a good idea to upgrade the biogas. When we talk about upgrading biogas, we really talk about separating the different gases that take part of the biogas. This is also called cleaning or washing the gas. First, we need to remove the water vapor that follows the hot and wet conditions inside a plant. This is easily done by condensating the water, that is, turning it from vapor to liquid by reducing the temperature. You also want to remove the hydrogen sulfide, H2S, as this is a toxic and corrosive gas that, when in high enough concentrations, can harm both people and equipment. All the key components of the biogas, H2S, methane, and CO2, can be separated from each other by using either membranes, absorbents, or by cooling. Membranes are like filters that work by capturing one type of gas while allowing others to pass through. Absorbents are just a liquid that absorb one type of gas. For example, water absorbs CO2, so if you bubble the biogas through clean water, you are left with mostly methane. You can then regenerate the water by heating it, which reduces its capacity to hold on the CO2 and therefore releases it. You can also separate gases by cooling them, as different gases have different temperatures at which they liquefy. Once the gases have been separated, we tend to give them another name. Methane from biogas is usually called biomethane and can be delivered as compressed biomethane or liquefied biomethane. These products follow the same standards as natural gas and can be used in the same way, for example in heavy-duty vehicles, industries, or in ships. CO2 from biogas is often referred to as bio-CO2. The market for this product is still in development, as not all biogas plants capture the CO2 they produced. But it can be used for refrigeration, in greenhouses, or even in carbonated drinks. Now, ask yourself, would you drink soda that was carbonated by clean and safe CO2 produced from your own feces? Like it or not, this is circular bioeconomy in practice. Another interesting thought is that biogas plants that upgrade their biogas can become carbon sequestration plants by also storing the bio-CO2 that they produce. Carbon sequestration is a technology that many believe belongs to the future, but it can be implemented in existing biogas plants relatively easily and with relatively small investments. Nitrogen enrichment or nitrogen fixation means increasing the nitrogen content in the manure or digestate, improving its qualities as a fertilizer. This can be done by breaking up nitrogen directly from the air and trapping it in the manure or digestate that we want to improve. This technology could make farmers less reliable on companies that produce chemical fertilizers, by giving them the equipment and means to make their own fertilizer directly on the farm. However, the process is very energy demanding and is only profitable when energy prices are low, which has not been the case in recent years. In the future, with prospects of lower energy prices as Europe builds up their capacity for renewable energy production and storage, this technology may have its breakthrough. Combining the technologies into a biorefinery plant. The main reason for why you want to combine several technologies into a high-tech biorefinery plant is given by the bioeconomy value pyramid. When you have an organic material, you ideally want to convert it into a product that is high up in the bioeconomy value pyramid. However, in doing so, you'll probably be making residue streams, such as fiber pulp and brown juice that we produced when extracting protein from gras. Or, if you use these residues as feed, you still have the animal manure. Even though we want to produce high-value products, this is often expensive and not worth it economically. Another reason to combine technologies is to make use of everything. This is applicable to the CO2 liquefaction plant that allows us to make use of the bio-CO2 that normally just would be released to the atmosphere. A third reason is that sometimes you may have needs that require additional refining. In our case, as an example, that is the biogas upgrading plant, which makes biomethane that can be used to run a tractor. This makes sense at our location, as the heat that is being produced in the combined heat and power engine is not needed during the summer, while fuel for a tractor is very useful during growing season. So let's go through the whole process and synergies for our concept plant. First, we have our protein extraction plant, which takes gras as an input and creates concentrated animal feed. We will also want to test this technology using waste from fruit and juice production, as there are several large producers close to where we are planning this pilot plant. In the future, we hope that this technology will solve challenges related to agricultural waste streams that are not desired or needed as animal feed, while at the same time increasing Norway's own production of fish feed for aquaculture, which today relies heavily on imported soya. The waste stream from the protein extraction, in addition to animal manure, then enters the biogas plant. Here, it is broken down by microorganisms, producing digestate or biofertilizer, and stored energy in the form of biogas. We have also added a module for pretreatment in our concept, making it possible to make use of hard biomass. The biogas then goes into a CHP, a combined heat and power plant that produces both heat and electricity through a gas engine. This is desirable during winter months where there is a high energy demand to heat buildings. However, during the summer, when there is no demand for heating, the CHP becomes less efficient. Additionally, there are other relatively cheap and well-known technologies, such as using wood chips or wood pellets in a burner, that can satisfy the heating needs in an efficient and sustainable manner. Therefore, it makes sense to upgrade our biogas and use it to substitute diesel, which is much harder to replace with a sustainable fuel. Since we are already separating the biomethane in the biogas from our upgrading plant, it also makes sense to facilitate for the use of bio-CO2 that results in a waste stream. Since we don't have any use of CO2 at our location, transport-ready storage is needed. The CO2 liquefaction plant provides a solution that produces bio-CO2 tanks, ready to be sold, for example, to greenhouses. We still have one important output from our biogas plant, namely the digestate. To improve its qualities as a fertilizer, we have proposed a nitrogen fixation module, which increases the ammonia content in the digestate, making it an excellent fertilizer for local crops. Each technology that we have included in our concept has the aim to increase the value of a product while solving a local problem or meeting a demand. There is, however, one very important piece that is missing from our story, and that is the engine that makes circular bioeconomy possible, namely the photosynthesis. With the nutrients from the biofertilizer, the CO2 from the air, and powered with the energy from the sun, our growing plants are really what makes circular bioeconomy possible. There are many technologies that we could have included into our concept, but didn't. Here are some of them, and their reasons for why we chose to exclude them. Dewatering of manure before sending it into a biogas plant can serve two purposes. Firstly, by removing the water, you also reduce the need for transport. And since you can't produce biogas from water, you don't lose much of the biogas potential by doing this. Secondly, you separate the nitrogen from the phosphorus. This happens naturally because nitrogen tends to follow the liquid part of the separation process, while the phosphorus follows the dry part. This is beneficial in areas that have an overpopulation of farm animals and an excess of phosphorus, which can cause nutrient runoff and become a pollutant problems in rivers and lakes. Similarly, dewatering the digestate can be beneficial for biogas plants that are located in areas with dense population of farm animals. The nitrogen-rich liquid fraction can be used locally, while the phosphorus-rich solid fraction can be cost-effectively transported to areas with need of a phosphorus fertilizer, such as wheat fields. There are two prevalent methods of dewatering manure and digestate. Using a screw press or a decanter centrifuge. The difference is that screw press is cheaper but slower and usually doesn't separate as well as the decanter centrifuge. In some cases, you may need to add some chemicals, flocculants, to help bind the particles together and improve the result of the separation process. In our case, dewatering was not needed because of the small-scale plant and interest in digestate locally. However, if we wanted to produce more biogas, it could be interesting to have a mobile screw press that went between farms in the area to make a dry cake collected in containers ready to be transported to our biogas plant. As we have already mentioned, if you are stationed in an area with lots of farm animals, you may have an excess of phosphorus in your area compared to the needs of the arable land. To mitigate any contamination of rivers, lakes and fjords, you may need to somehow remove and export the phosphorus. There are many ways to do this, for example through chemical precipitation, through struvite extraction, or even by burning the material and recovering the phosphorus from the ashes. These techniques require industrial scales, so we don't go into the details in this video. Pyrolysis and gasification are similar technologies that involve heating up organic materials in the absence of oxygen. Both technologies produce biochar, bio-oil, and syngas, which is a gas mixture consisting mainly of CO and hydrogen. In general, pyrolysis will give a higher quality biochar, while gasification will produce more syngas due to higher operational temperatures. While both these technologies are promising and can be implemented in farm scale, they have one major drawback compared to biogas production, and that is that they don't retain nutrients as well, especially nitrogen. From a circular bioeconomy perspective, biogas production is therefore the preferred method of treating organic material. However, there are some materials where biogas is not a fitting alternative, such as treating plastics or treating contaminated waste that is not suitable as a fertilizer. If you are interested in more information about these technologies, reports, information material, presentations, videos, or educational material, please see the links provided below. My name is Tord. Thank you so much for watching.